Bob Dylan is sick and tired of his critics. In an interview with Rolling Stone, the 71-year-old folk rock icon, who has just released his 35th studio album, addressed charges of plagiarism, calling his critics wussies and pussies for claiming he was stealing from the works of others. In 2006, the New York Times accused Dylan of borrowing from a Civil War-era poet on his Modern Times album, and the Wall Street Journal claimed Dylan's 2001 record Love and Theft had very similar phrasing to a 1995 biography of a Japanese mobster. Dylan claims that in folk and jazz, quotation is a rich and enriching tradition, and he compared the accusations to folk fans calling him Judas when he started to play the electric guitar on stage for the first time in the early 1960s. No doubt some will examine Dylan's latest album, Tempest, for its authenticity. But in his latest interview, Dylan has a few choice words for his harshest critics. They can rot in hell.
Have you ever lied to Mr. Damiano?
Yes.
And can you list for me the times that you lied to him?
Many times, not many times, but on those occasions when he would ask me, could I pass on something to Mr. Dylan, I may have said to him, I'll try and pass it along, or words to that effect.
In 1996, James Damiano posted the findings of his lawsuit against Bob Dylan on the internet and received over 8 million hits. It was at this time that Bob Dylan's musical works were called into question, and the origin of his songs started to be scrutinized by critics. These critics included music reporters, editors of music magazines and newspapers, college professors, and literary people. His fans were astute in evaluating his duplicity concerning his material, and came to learn that 80% of the melodies and lyrical hooks of his songs were plagiarized. These songs included Blowin In The Wind, Like a Rolling Stone, The Times Are A-Changin', Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Reading It, and many more, including his Grammy-nominated hit, Dignity. Comments were being published, such as, quote, I was watching a Pete Seeger documentary recently that featured his performance of I Dreamed I Saw Joe Hill Last Night, and I couldn't believe the similarity of the two lyrics. The phrasing and the cadence of these lines were exactly the same, except replacing St. Augustine for Joe Hill Last Night. I already knew Dylan writes this way. There are other more apparent examples of Dylan taking a phrase, or sentence, or song, and reappropriating it for his own uses, such as rolling and tumbling off Modern Times. Just to be clear, I don't find this controversial at all. That's simply how folk music works. But after hearing Joe Hill, I'm starting to realize that there might be many more examples of this that I'm completely unaware of. Do you know of any? As this avalanche of evidence started to bury Dylan, he hid like a cornered weasel behind corrupt lawyer, judges, and journalists who covered up his massive affinity for plagiarism. The heat got so bad that he had to answer in some fashion. When asked what he thinks of people who charge him with plagiarizing songs, Dylan replied, "Wussies and pussies complain about that stuff." Also, Dylan recently, in a Los Angeles Times interview, admitted to plagiarism by definition. In a 2004 interview with Robert Hilburn of the Los Angeles Times, Bob Dylan stated, "Well, you have to understand that I'm not a melodist. My songs are either based on old Protestant hymns or Carter family songs. What happens is, I'll take a song and simply start playing it in my head. That's the way I meditate. I wrote Blowin In The Wind in 10 minutes. Just put words to an old spiritual, probably something I learned from Carter Family Records. The Times They Are A-Changing is probably from an old Scottish folk song. I'll be playing Bob Nolan's Tumbleweeds, for instance, in my head constantly, while talking to a person or sitting around, whatever. People will think they are talking to me, and I'm talking back, but I'm not. I'm listening to the song in my head. At a certain point, some of the words will change, and I'll start writing a song. End quote.